Welcome to Bridging User and Buyer Attention with customer interviews, journey maps, and KPIs. So here's the situation that I was just mentioning. So years ago, I inherited a 20-year-old product at a healthcare company in revenue cycle management. It was called Charge Capture Audit, and it helped more than 400 hospitals find missing charges that were on patient bills before they went out to patients or to the insurance companies as claims. A charge on a bill is basically a procedure or some material that happened. So you might have an injection that a nurse provides, but also the injectable of what the drug was. So those two things need to be on there accurately. So our customers, we had um, we had over 2,500 different happy users using this product to help find those missing charges. They told us it made them more efficient and more compliant, but we had a problem. Our sales were in a free fall. Recent customers were churning and the product was dying for some reason. And some people were even suggesting we lower the price. Maybe that will increase sales, but that's almost never the right thing for an existing product to do. So I looked at our existing marketing materials to investigate what the problem might be. The job to be done was clear. We help hospital staff find missing charges on bills efficiently so that they could be more compliant. So users love the product, but here's the thing, our users weren't buyers. So I did something PMs don't usually do. I sat in on sales calls. And yes, some salespeople resisted that at first, but it proved that I could add value since prospects like getting insider knowledge from the product manager. So you can use that as a tip too, is, make those prospects feel special and the salespeople will bring you along more often. And that's when I saw the gap. Our salespeople were using this marketing material to pitch features. Our system has thousands of clinical rules, real-time dashboards, automated workflows. And the buyers, these hospital CFOs or department heads, they sat there doing mental math. Okay, so if my team uses these features, maybe we could find more revenue, I guess. But how much is it worth though? Is it like $400,000 a year, $1 million a year? We don't know. So we were making them guess at the product's value. And when buyers have to guess, they say no. That's when I realized that features do not equal value. I looked at all those different pricing websites and things that are out there, and they all list all these features. And you think the more features you have, the better that value is going to be conveyed to your prospect. But that's not always the case. So I tried to figure out what could we do. So I interviewed our best salespeople, the ones that were making deals happen, and some of our longest tenured customers. I asked the department heads and CFOs when I got a chance to, what are you really trying to get out of this product? And the answer was simple, more revenue. Not efficiency, not better workflows. It was more revenue. Revenue on the top line and the bottom line. But we were showing them the features, but we weren't connecting those features to the revenue itself. So we needed to connect the dots for them. And that's when I did something radical. I built zero new product features. Sorry, I didn't build anything. We had enough features, we just weren't positioning them well. Instead, what I did build was a revenue calculator in Excel for our sales team. I pulled public financial data for all the hospitals, analyzed the usage patterns from our existing customers, our existing users, correlated that usage to revenue impact, and I created a formula to simulate the same effect for prospects based upon their size and their operations. So before we had 50 slides about features with thousands of rules and workflows, and that sounds cool, but afterwards we had 5 slides about the revenue. We could tell them that hospitals of their size capture, in this case, this a real example, $8 million more annually with our product, resulting in a 32x ROI. So which one do you think ended up working better? I convinced one of our forward-thinking salespeople to try it out, and deals started closing. So others soon noticed, and so I trained the entire sales team on this approach. Our free fall of sales turned into a mountain climb. And we didn't just stop the decline as it was going down, we actually raised prices. We were able to justify that because the value was clearly there now. Our users cared about efficiency, and not making mistakes because they were compliance focused and their job was to make sure they got everything right. But the buyers cared about revenue and margin. So the same product, different languages for different audiences. The problem wasn't our features, the problem was we weren't bridging user efficiency to buyer revenue. And that bridge, that mapping is what I'm teaching you today. How to connect user jobs to buyer economics so you never leave buyers guessing. I'm going to show you the exact process I used live in Miro using the real artifacts from that turnaround. And yes, this works for external and internal products. Sales isn't a requirement here. You have other buyer stakeholders that are for your product that also think in a different way from your users. Here's the end-to-end framework. We will connect the user needs with the buyer needs with a four-step bridge. That bridge consists of 4 different steps here. First, user and buyer interviews. We're going to ask better questions. This isn't just a product feedback interview session. We need to make sure we're understanding things more thoroughly about the next step, the customer journey mapping. We're going to understand the whole job, not just your product, not just what they do inside your product, but what are they doing to accomplish something for the next step, the business that they operate in. So every person is hired to do a job that is supposed to drive some sort of KPI at a higher level. So you can think about this. How does their job that we just mapped out relate to the department and the company objectives that they fall within? Now that we've got this research done, we've got to do something with it to actually take action. That's what they expect of us as product managers. Make sure that we're driving success of our product through action. We're going to use hypothesis-based story mapping. It's where we turn those first 3 steps into that plan, and we can then go give it to our team. And that's how we connect those user needs all the way to the buyer needs with a great story. So what happened when I did this? Well, in 2 years, our sales doubled and my career quadrupled. I moved up through promotions and I got offered an unsolicited VP of product role at another company. And you want to know who recommended me for the job? It was my old boss that actually watched this happen and saw the success there. And because I was able to connect things at that higher level that he understood as well. Okay, so let's get to it so you can have that kind of success too. I'm going to take you through the 4 steps. We're going to go back and forth a little bit. I'll introduce the concept briefly in slides, and then I'll show you what it looks like in Miro. So let's go. So the first one is we need to interview customers, but we need to interview them better. We need to interview both the users and the buyers when we can. Not every time can you get a hold of the buyers too, but when you can, you really want to push for that next level. But we're not going to be asking them about product feedback. We can get to that, yes, but we're going to be asking them better questions. We need to get to know them, what they do every day, why do they matter to their department and their company overall. And we need to talk to enough of them that we see a pattern. It doesn't take long. Patterns start to emerge around 5 to 7 interviews, but you can keep this going and make sure that you have all the evidence you need, but don't wait till you have, in this case, 12 interviews or 15 before you can start making decisions. You can start seeing this stuff very early on. Okay, I'll switch to Miro here and show you the actual questions that I used. Where'd it go? Here are the actual questions that I used back then. And these weren't perfect, but they drive to the point of what led to success. So I highlighted a few things. First, I preempted some things and told them I might be asking them a lot of questions on the way, and they might be different than some of the questions that they've gotten in the past. But I wanted to let them know that that ahead of time so they didn't feel weirded out. But then as I started asking them questions about their team and their processes and what they think about, how they prioritize their work, how is their organization changing, what drives them, how do they measure results? When I talk to their managers, how do they measure results and try to impact or incentivize their team? How are they driven? So if they're a manager, what incentives are they working towards? These are all things that we need to know about the company. And yes, we can get to the product focus afterwards, but try to work and try to understand their whole job and then how it fits into the picture of the whole company. And also what's interesting is once they start talking about themselves, they keep talking. You ever had a customer interview to where you're asking them about the product and you get yes or no answers all the time, things that are not all that helpful? You want them to keep talking and lead you more into more information. And when you ask them about themselves, they are now the center of attention versus your product. So it actually works great for building rapport in customer interviews as well. All right, so next is the customer journey map. Let's go back to slides for a second. So the customer journey mapping, this is simply taking what you just learned and plotting it visually in a step-by-step process. What do they do to get their job done? Your product probably fits right there in the middle, but you want to know a little bit beforehand and a little bit after. What are they going to do before your product? What are they going to do afterwards so that you have a bigger perspective? And this is a visual depiction. Visuals always help in communication. I always use visuals whenever I have something that's complicated to try to make the whole thing simpler to understand. So we're going to just plot their process. Who is involved? What steps do they take? And then below you can put things like what emotional state they're in. Oftentimes designers like to make sure that they can articulate that sentiment that's in there of the friction points. And then you can list those pain points and you can list other opportunities. You can list, who's doing what and success looks like. So let's take a look at what this looks like for the same product, a charge capture audit. Now, I didn't have the exact customer workflow or journey that I had back then, so I just recreated it with a simple Miro template. These are built-in templates. It's really easy to do. Takes only no time at all. So there's no excuse for getting this, not doing this. Just open up Miro, the free version, and you've got these templates already built in. So their process consisted of 6 key steps. They've got to get the data over here. They've got to now run the rules, those thousands of fancy rules that we have. Then this is where the analysts really start looking at things. They investigate the exceptions that are found from those rules, and they make corrections. They are going to add charges to the bill, and then they're going to report the results because you want to be able to show the ROI of what you're working on, how much new revenue was found, but also where were those issues found too, because what they want to take those and take them back to the departments that created the problem to begin with. So somebody upstream was making missing charges. They might not have put something on the bill correctly. And so they want to try to train that and prevent more issues from going forward. Okay, so that's their day-to-day life. But this is what our users focus on. And remember, the users don't really cover all the things that the buyers might care about. So what is it that we learned from those managers that we talked about? That's what we need to layer on top of this, or rather above this. So above them, what is it that their department focuses on? What is it that their company focuses on? So let's take a look at how that works with our third step here. We're going to align those KPIs. So let's say you've got your customer journey map. There's at least some definition of success of what the user thinks that they need to be doing every day. And so if you look at it, those are, a few different metrics. They want to get their job done better, easier, faster, more delightful, whatever those metrics are. Those are our base product metrics we're probably familiar with. If you're not tracking them, I would definitely suggest you start thinking about some product metrics because you need to be thinking about these things for making product decisions. But when we look at those success metrics, we want to think about how do they impact the department that they sit in. So the department that they're aligned to has certain objectives, KPIs, and then those roll up to some relevant or related company objectives. Maybe not everything. So in this case, these charge capture analysts sat in a revenue integrity department that then rolled up to the CFO and then the whole company. And when we think about it, the department level heads and the company, that's where our buyers live. That's where executives live. This is where business owners live. Depending on what kind of company you work in or who you quote unquote sell to, this is the language that they're speaking every day. They're not speaking about, oh, the pain points in your product. They don't know that. Sometimes they don't know anything about the pain points that their staff is actually experiencing, but they do see the results of that. So you need to be able to take and connect those pain points up to the KPIs. So let's map those in an example here. So for example, when we look, our users wanted to catch more errors. That was their job. They needed to catch more errors and not let things go. They needed to catch those errors earlier. They wanted to review more bills per analyst. So how do I get more done in the same day per person? They want to finish their reviews earlier, et cetera. So these are things that they care about at the user level. But when we think about, okay, how does that matter to the department, that revenue integrity department? Okay, so if I catch more errors, that means that I'm going to capture all those charges that we might be missing. So I want complete accuracy of our bills. And because what that happens, that leads to the company level objective of maximizing revenue. Now, all of a sudden, I can take a pain point that I found that is preventing these analysts from catching more errors, and I can tie that to language that the CFOs care about. So I now have a justification for a feature now with a company outcome all the way. All right, so your job is to make sure that you're going to do this, and you want to track the lineage of these things from top down and from bottom up. Next is we're going to now go back and look at how can we impact some of these. So we've got the three things that we've got: the customer interviews to generate our raw data. We have our journey mapping to visualize where our users invest their time and where we should probably invest ours too. And then we have the business KPIs that are aligned top down so that we can justify some work. Now we're going to make some big bets. You've heard of this, like product bets. I phrase it as a hypothesis. What do you believe? So if you believe that something really simple, if we helped this kind of user with this problem, it'll help them accomplish this goal. And if they accomplish this goal, it's going to help their company accomplish X. Okay, so you're going to write a few of these objectives or hypotheses. And then what we're going to do is take these hypotheses, we're going to rank them by potential impact versus feasibility. And yes, you should probably use your engineering leads and your design leads to help you out here. But you're going to rank them by that ROI equivalent. And this can be rough to start with, but you want to be able to put some bets down. And now you're going to layer those in under your customer journey map. This is called user story mapping. So you take the same thing that you had, your customer journey map across the top, see the major steps, the minor steps along the way, and then you're going to put this first hypothesis and create a row. See this black row right here? This is going to be your first major release. And what's going to be in here are user stories that affect part of a customer's process. So if this is their charging area where they're going to add charges, then you're going to do a couple different user stories here to make that more efficient for them, because that might be the theme of this hypothesis. Your next row is going to be your next hypothesis, and your third row. And let me show you an example as to why we would do it this way. So we're going to write out 5 simple hypotheses. We believe that if we show auditors or these analysts pricing data in real time, they're going to catch more errors before the bills go out. What that's going to do is reduce their rework because they're having to switch systems or fix mistakes. And they're going to be able to capture $2.8 million more in revenue. So that's a made up number, but to the point of how do I connect that all the way up to the top? So is that something that our CFOs, our buyers care about? Yes, they care about maximizing revenue. And I'm talking about a department level objective, and I'm talking about a product level objective that our users care about. And I have a bet, a feature idea that's going to affect that. Let's do one more. We believe that if we flag missing charges before the bills are finalized, then hospitals get paid 5 days faster and can capture more revenue annually. Why does that matter? Or does it matter? Yes. One of the related company objectives is to reduce the days of accounts receivable, outstanding days. How fast do you get paid? Because cash flow is an issue at the company level, but those analysts know nothing about that usually. So how do we make sure we're connecting the dots when we're talking about this feature, and why does it matter? We're going to take these hypotheses, let's take the first 3, and we're going to slot them in on a user story map. So this is another template in Miro that is just easy and ready to go. You could take that same customer journey map and do the same thing, or like I did, just recreate it as a user story map template. And you can go and add different steps along the way. See these little plus buttons here? I can add new user stories. I can add new tasks. I can break things apart. So the first one is real-time pricing visibility. That's our first hypothesis. And it consists of, let's say it's 8 major user stories that go in it. Most of the user stories are here. How do we show visibility of the price at the moment that they're adding those charges? And you can use this template to say, okay, here's the rest of the user story. So I've got a title, and I can add anything else. So you can then use this with your team and go from evidence that you've got from customer interviews, a visual anchor so that people understand where how their work matters in the context of a customer's job to be done. And now all of a sudden you can relate every single one of these user stories to a metric that a buyer or one of your stakeholder executives care about. So this is the magic here. You now can tell the story for every single feature that you have. You don't have to do this for new features. You can also back into this for your existing features like I did. So every feature now has a hypothesis. You can easily show where it fits in your customer's job and their company, and you can connect it to real evidence from your interviews. So this is the magic. Now you're ready for any executive conversation that you have. So never are you going to be stumped again. Let's say that they ask a question about why are we building that feature? Oh, because it helps our users do X, which leads to an increase in Y company metric. Oh, well, okay. Well, what are we doing about Z market trend? Well, we know that companies need more A. Let's say it's revenue, or they want to improve their AR days, whatever it might be. That's impacted by users in this department. In our case, it was the revenue integrity department. And their limiting factor that we found through our research is this step of the process. Therefore, we're helping them with real-time pricing visibility. Boom. Now you're never stumped. You can take this and have a conversation, keep it in your head. How do I think visually about my user story, mapping to a customer job, mapping to a department KPI and a company KPI? Think about it that way every time you tell the story about what's happening in your product. Every time you need to have some sort of justification as to why we're doing what we're doing, or how you can show your strategic thinking in how you've mapped a market trend or a market need all the way down to your roadmap. So this is a connected series of techniques that prepare you for every conversation, whether that's in a sales situation with a buyer, you're creating product marketing so that it appeals to somebody, or you're talking to an executive, you're talking to your boss. They all start nodding along like, oh, wow, this person actually gets it. Not only do they get the users, they get the importance of everything that's happening too. So if you want to learn how to do this and dozens of other practical tips on your actual work, so come join us for the next cohort of the Influential PM on Maven. In just 4 weeks, you'll leave with a portfolio of artifacts just like these, what I showed you, but on your own product. You'll be able to learn something new on a Thursday and show it to the team on a Monday. You can do that every Monday for the next month and beyond. The next cohort starts on Tuesday, literally in 5 days from now, and there are only a few spots remaining there. So if you found this beneficial, this 45 minutes here, then, or 30-ish minutes so far, then you'll love the course. Now that we're going through all those techniques, I went through them really fast. All right, to get you as much information as possible in a short amount of time. So this is the time to ask questions. What did I speed through? What example do you want me to go through in a little bit more detail? And I even have a B2B to C example too with this whole storyline. It's just too much to fit all within that 45 minutes, but I can jump into examples of that one too, where your users literally sit in a completely different organization or no organization at all from your buyers. So consumers versus your buyer in a B2B market too, which is really complicated. Okay. You can either raise your hand, you can come off mute, or you can put it in the chat. Let me see what questions are already in the chat. If you fix a problem before it comes to fruition, how much does it save? Hard to calculate the unknown. Yeah, those are some questions that are hard to deal with, like risk. So risk reduction, what you can think about, Ethan, here is that what is the consequence if it did happen? And then that's really the savings that you're trying to think of there. It is a little bit harder of a play because you're like, well, would it have happened? Well, we don't know, but we can look at other history of other companies maybe that have gone through that same situation. Okay, next question. Are there metrics that haven't been identified yet? Complete accuracy might not be attainable sometimes, even for advanced AI. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, let me recalibrate to see what I mentioned that for which topic was. Hold up here. Yeah, I think like you're just a part of your, I guess one part of your slides was mentioning about, I think trying to get maybe all the variables. Again, I'm trying to paraphrase in the best way possible. I know it made a lot of sense during one of the parts, but you had a lot of really good topics. So essentially, yeah, like sometimes we can do the math on something, but again, if there's variables that aren't captured, I mentioned this in other under other sessions. You can't really get the solution right sometimes. And again, I'm kind of talking about the base of a lot of issues. So like maybe these things kind of seem like a bit philosophical, but I think it ties into some of the things that yeah you mentioned. But I think I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I apologize if you don't understand or I didn't explain too properly there. Yeah.
yeah, that's okay. I think there are some things in there I do need a caveat here.
Sure.
This all looks very simple, but it can be very complicated when you get down into it. What I will try to reassure you about is that you don't have to be completely precise in order to make good decisions. You're never going to have complete data. You're never going to have all these metrics. So like, am I able to really calculate every single one of these metrics? If it's in my product, yes, I can probably calculate some of those things. But when it comes to the value-based metrics that our customers achieve, those are things that are in their system, right? I had to come up with a directional formula for revenue impact, right? Our customers weren't telling us specifically how much revenue they got every single time. So I had to figure out what are the assumptions to make to get there. And what I'm going to be doing next is then making decisions with that directionality versus precision. And I can caveat that, but it'll at least give me some confidence. What I don't want to do is just stop because I don't have perfection here around what metrics are available. And I don't want to stop because I only had 2 interviews instead of 20. So you've got to start to see patterns and make decisions based upon the patterns that you're seeing. And the more you see them, the more confidence you have to make decisions. That's all this is about. Our currency as product managers is how good of decisions we can be making because we're going to be guiding our teams and our company towards a certain direction. So our decisions need to be good, but they're never going to be perfect. Like I can tell you, I learned this lesson here, went to the next company, and had the lesson taught to me again in a new market altogether. I got the user versus buyer issue wrong again. So, and then we had to revamp our
Wow.
entire strategy as well. So you'll learn this stuff and you'll make mistakes, but the idea is you practice your end-to-end thinking and being able to showcase that. That's going to build your career. It's going to build your strategy muscles over and over again.
Great point that you mentioned at the end-to-end thinking. Exactly. So if you don't understand the complete framework, how can you make a proper decision? I understand, and I also understand that perfection might not be the metric here, for example. And again, it depends if the person knows what the role they're doing in the first place, right? I think that's why that's the issue. If I know that this is more kind of just creating value, regardless of maybe the mistakes that we're going to make, which will probably make with so many variables at play, and keep on bouncing back, keep on proceeding. Now I understand that's kind of more the structure as opposed to kind of getting it perfect the first time because again, I don't know what's being measured here, right? Like or other clients or other products and whatnot, but like I said, like this is very informative. Like yeah, I have way more things to add. Like hopefully one day with you, other cohorts, other team members, and all that. And I can't wait to speak with you. I gotta hop off. Uh,
Understood. Yeah.
very soon. So and
Well, thanks for sticking around, Ethan.
likewise, Brennan. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I know I scheduled 45 minutes, but most people probably have to drop at 30 and
Had an overlapping interview, but hopefully we'll talk to each other again. Okay, Brennan.
yep.
Take care, man.
Brendan, I have a question for you.
Hey Aaron, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Great. What's your
Um,
question?
So do you have, you'll probably cover it in your cohort, but do you have any like quick resources or books or recommendations for navigating user interviews and potentially like structuring questions from both a buyer and a user perspective differently?
Yeah, my favorite book on this is The Mom Test, which is a funny name, but really short and impactful book. It's
Okay.
mostly from the standpoint of an entrepreneur going out and validating ideas without bias. And so it teaches you the phrasing to use to get unbiased information. There's a lot of that in there.
Okay.
The what they don't really talk about so much is this leveling, whereas we in B2B, we have to talk about what do your bosses care about. So there's not necessarily a book that I can think of that connects those dots, but I'll give you one anchor question that you can kind of branch out from that.
Okay.
If you were to think about your boss's boss's boss, whatever that might be, depending on how big the company is, what would get them fired? What would they have done so poorly that they got fired because of it? And so now all of a sudden you're going to uncover, maybe they're not cascading metrics very well in their company and their staff that you're talking to don't know like a specific outcome or OKR or something like that. It's too technical for most people, but they could probably tell you, oh yeah, if they screwed up, it would be this. This would be the big problem. And you can also ask the vice versa around, well, what would they have done to be able to get a promotion? Who is getting promoted and based on what? Now, they'll talk about politics sometimes, but if you think about like company results, you can steer them towards that. Those are the two insightful questions that are a basis for conversation that you can gather a lot from.
Okay. Thank you.
And another vote for the mom test. Thank you. It's a good one. Thanks, Aaron. Other questions? Okay, well, we'll wrap it up here. What I want you to remember is you need to connect user jobs to buyer economics so you never leave your buyers guessing. You can connect with me on LinkedIn like Ethan has, and we'll talk a little bit more about some other topics, or you can join me in the cohort starting in October. And if October doesn't work, November works as well. I will see you at the next one. Bye, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Brennan.
Thanks, Brennan.
Thanks, Brian.